Hello there, and happy Star Wars Day from us here at the Sky Guys podcast. We know we're busy in the middle of Andor season, but we now want to leave you without a special bonus Star Wars Day episode here for May the 4th. And we decided this is the appropriate time to revisit Revenge of the Sith 20 years later. I'm one of your hosts, Mike Phillips. Maybe as always, and as voice you hear in the narration every single week, Pete Consadori is here. Pete, how are you?
Doing well. I'm looking like the ghost of Anakin and Obi-Wan right now, and my lighting is just absolutely atrocious. But yeah, happy to be here. Excited to talk Star Wars with you guys as always, and excited to talk about my favorite Star Wars film. So, very cool.
Yep. Also here with us today, the snooping senator of this podcast, Nick Fraietta is here. Nick, how are you?
I'm doing well. I had noticed recently that my lighting's horrible. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna try to fix that. Maybe I gotta buy one of those things to make it not horrible. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna do that.
Yeah, keep an eye on that in the future
You
here.
have good lighting, Mike. You do.
Yeah, well, I have a desktop monitor and I have it positioned correctly, so
Maybe if I turned my zoom off dark mode, it would light on my face.
we'll see.
You know what
Maybe.
I used to do? Go onto Microsoft Word and just put a blank page and make it fill the screen.
Well, if I do this, you see that? Looks not bad, right?
It's not bad.
Eh,
But then I can't, I mean, I can, then I can't see you guys.
Yes. Probably will work out in the future here, but people want to subscribe us in the Sky Guys. You can do so Apple Podcasts, Google Play, TuneIn, Spotify, Amazon, all usual suspects. So we search for the Sky Guys favorite podcast platform. You get all episodes there. We'll be back on the Andor hunt this week here as you get ready for Arc 3. So make sure you're subscribed. Make sure you those are the rest of Andor and beyond.
We say it every week. Subscribe. New YouTube channel's up and running with the Andor season 2. That's only YouTube spot you can get it. So make sure you're subscribed there if you don't know where it's been. So make sure you subscribe to the new YouTube at Sky Guys Podcast, and everywhere else. Right? It's free. Just helps us out. Gives you the content quicker.
Yep. Nick, we want to follow social media. I'm going to do that.
You can follow at Sky Guys Podcast pretty much everywhere. And if you want to email the pod, it's at skyguyspod@gmail.com.
Speaking of the YouTube channel, people go there for our social media comment of the week here. This is our when we had Kyle Katarn on a few weeks ago. This comment is from Shonix9, who says, best possible guest this episode with two clapping hands emojis. So we agree with you, Shonix. We loved having Kyle on that episode.
100%. Great, great guest. Would love to do more work with Kyle in the future. Hopefully he feels the same. But yeah, no, it was a great experience and it was a great guest.
Absolutely here. So Nick, we know we've been busy with the Star Wars celebration a few weeks ago. We have a couple things that slipped through the cracks. So we'll give you a little mini news today.
So I actually you have you two items listed here, and I actually have a third that I'm going to add that's in relation to one of the ones you have. So let me just start. It will make more sense as we go.
Yep.
So the first one, I'm going to go out of order here. The first one is Nick Frost, who voiced SN33 and Skeleton Crew, is going to be playing Hagrid in HBO's new Harry Potter series. It's going to debut next year. So kind of Harry Potter news, but also Star Wars because it's going to involve one of the voice actors.
Yeah, if we get Skeleton Crew season 2 at some point down the line, it might be harder to book Nick Frost.
Right. Yeah, we'll see. The other piece of news here is that a new Star Wars novel called Master of Evil is releasing in November of this year, November 11th, 2025, being written by Adam Christopher, and it chronicles Vader's haunting pursuit for the power to conquer death. Now, before we discuss this, there is a rumor going around that Tony Gilroy said that Star Wars is developing a horror project, but they don't know, they never said what type of medium that would be. I'm thinking this is it.
You think it's the book?
I think this is what he's talking about. Now, I don't know if he's related to the books in any way. I don't think he is, but maybe he just heard through the grapevines of this, and this is what he's talking about. Or if it's not what he's talking about, there's another piece of news that Tony Gilroy says they're working on a horror project.
Yeah, Pete, like if they decided to go down the horror realm, this would be fun to do. I know in the comics that like some of the stuff that Vader does to try and like resurrect Padme is dark and disturbing. So I do think this would be a cool idea if they actually do want to do it.
Just like you said, if they know how to do it, execute well, right? Acolyte not executed to the standards that people wanted, and that was a very cool concept for like an adult, more violent-esque Star Wars. So if they can execute it right and they can market it well, I say why not?
Yeah, I'll be all on board. I think like the horror Vader show of him
For sure.
navigating like the dark side, trying to find a way to bring Padme back to life. Because I think I mean, Nick, have you read any of the comics or heard about any of the storylines where Vader tries to resurrect her?
Not really.
All I know is like it gets like pretty dark at like some points where like Vader finds her and then like the ghost of Padme basically like hangs herself so that like she because she's disgusted by him. Like it's really creepy.
I believe it.
All right. That it for our mini news?
That is it.
All right. Let's get into what we're talking about here. The 20th anniversary of Revenge of the Sith here. So we've all rewatched this movie recently. So we're not gonna go beat by beat. We did a Obi-Wan watch on the pod a few years ago. So Pete, on this latest go around, what stuck out to you?
I mean, I still think that the importance of episode two and episode three is just so immense when it comes to the franchise. And every time I watch episode three, it just always brings me back to the importance of and the back and forth of just Anakin's story. So I mean, I don't think anything new jumped out to me. I've been watching this movie for, for as long as it's been out, rewatching it. But I mean, it definitely drives the point home about how torn Anakin was and how, the Jedi Council was mainly responsible for that.
Yeah. Nick, that was one of my big observations watching these movies that like the one thing I noticed this time around is that the first third of the movie before he flips the dark side, like Anakin's wandering around like a lost puppy, basically looking for answers to his problem because you see he goes to Yoda for help. He goes to Palpatine, he goes to Padme, he goes to Obi-Wan, and like no one's able to give him the answer he needs. And then that sort of leaves him open to being like swayed ultimately by Palpatine at the end here. So it does make you feel like he was conflicted. He was looking for somebody to help him, and nobody seemed to pick up what he's putting down.
Absolutely. That's kind of the whole first half of the movie, right? That's the plot. That's the plot.
Yeah, he just kind of goes from like person to person, like, "Will you help me? Will you help me? Will you help me?" And they all try to help in their own ways. They're not able to solve the problem he's trying to solve.
Because it's not solvable.
Yeah, except for Palpatine. Palpatine claims he can solve it.
And that I don't know if that's listed anywhere in canon, whether or not he was lying or if he can cheat death and he did so to keep Anakin alive. There's rumors about that at the end when Padme's laying on the I guess the hospital bed. I don't know the equivalent Star Wars version of it, and Anakin's I guess on the same, but her life is being sucked into him is a rumor I've heard from Palpatine. Another rumor is that Palpatine didn't know anything and just lied to him.
Yeah, very possible here. And the visions also, I think, are interesting because obviously, like, you realize it later on. Like basically, they just like cut the scenes from the end of the movie and put them into Anakin's dreams. So, like, I've always had this question, Pete. I want to know if you feel this way. Like, do you feel like Palpatine planted these dreams in Anakin and sort of precipitate the turnaround here?
It's a possibility. I mean, is it confirmed that he had that kind of power to do so? I don't know when it comes to that stuff. I'm not too versed when it comes to the very meticulous details of Star Wars. I would call myself a fan of a higher regard, but like not a super fan and I know everything. So I mean, if it's possible, sure, could be a thing. It would make sense. I like to take the movie at face value, and it is what it is, and I think it's something that Anakin struggles with because he is so passionate, and I think that that passion plus the use of the Force and having that gift probably created those scenarios where he kind of saw into the future, and that kind of made him, made the future happen because he saw it, right? He was kind of his own destiny at that point.
Yeah, Nick, what do you think about that?
I don't know, really. It's we don't really. Maybe we do, as Pete was saying, we do get those answers elsewhere. But if we do, I'm not aware of that. In my mind, he's just having extreme anxiety
Yeah.
and just seeing things, whether they're going to be real or not, it remains to be seen. I guess it did end up being real, but there's so many questions that are raised there. It's did Palpatine plant those memories or future memories in his head to persuade him, or did this just happen naturally? I'm kind of led to believe that Palpatine had to do with everything here because he had this whole plan that was taking place over, at this point, 13 years, but longer, really, to get himself even in position of senator. And to think that he would just leave out that detail. Oh, how's this guy gonna join me? I feel like he probably did think of that and did plant these memories in his head, if I had to guess.
Yeah, so like sort of like Pete like planting a vision here, and Anakin gets so disturbed by he ends up creating the vision himself by his actions that Palpatine manipulates him into taking.
I personally think if I was if it was me and I was the creative director of this, I would say that I think Palpatine just used those visions to his advantage,
Yeah.
and made them happen. I mean, don't forget that the Tusken Raider vision is before Episode 3, right? That's Episode 2, and you start to see that like turmoil and that back and forth with Anakin, and also his like beginning of the end for him, right? His demise where he goes and kills all the Tusken Raiders, and you see that conflict with him afterwards, but during that moment, he had no control over himself. He just did it because of his pure passion and anger. And I think Palpatine probably just used that, and he kind of knew that was going to happen. He probably was aware that Anakin was having these visions, and I mean, I think he mentions it before, in the movie too. He takes advantage of it and just leans into it. And I think it's just a happy accident, for him to be like, oh, we can use this to my advantage, and he's able to lean into it.
Yeah, I mean, we see the whole movie sort of Palpatine's big plan, Nick. I mean, like in terms of like when he says he basically audibles on Dooku, says Anakin kill him, and then sort of like starts just throws all his energy into Anakin at that point here. Like anything else you want to sort of that's jumped at you in this go around in the movie,
What do you mean, like up to when?
like in general in this movie, like anything that's stuck out to you.
Yeah, it's how in depth and detailed the Palpatine plan is in that even with everything, I guess you could say, accomplished by the end of the movie, he still sends Anakin slash Vader to Mustafar to kill the rest of the Separatists. They were not told of that part of the plan. They knew the rest of the plan, it seems like, based on their reaction. Is that they were promised peace and whatnot. It seems like they were aware of what was going to happen, and then it was like, but if you do all this, we will give you peace and let you, I guess, live freely. And that was clearly a lie. But a lot. There's just so much into the plan, and not even all of it's done yet. I think the plan's not done until about halfway through A New Hope.
Yeah.
The Death Star is fully built. The Senate is no more. And it's interesting how this plan really, if you think about it, spans over 30, 35, probably longer. Like I mentioned earlier, he had to get himself even into the Senate. So probably close to 50 years.
Yeah. It is wild. Another Death Star point, P. It's always funny thinking about it when we see the plans, I think, from the Geonosians episode 2, and then by 3 they have the exoskeleton built, which somehow they did this without nobody in the public being aware of this. And 15, and we're in the middle of Andor now, that they still haven't finished this thing here. So it's incredible, like how bad the construction work was from the Empire here on getting this project moving forward.
I mean, their organizational skills and everything that they do is seems to be, half-assed, if you will.
Yeah.
We see that with, Project Necromancer in the Bad Batch. We see it with a bunch of things. So I think that there's a lot to be said about the Empire always having that reputation of really not doing things the way they should be, right? Or up to standards that would keep things, running smoothly.
Well,
Yeah.
if you remember correctly from Rogue One, the issue with getting the Death Star finished was the laser.
Yeah.
They were more or less done with that thing on time and on schedule. It's that laser that just took way too long.
Yeah. Did they need like to find like some kind of like kyber crystal to power or something like that?
Yeah, which is why they were at Jeddah.
Yeah.
And then the Galen Erso, they needed him because he's one of the only ones that could, that him and his scientists were able to figure it out. And it's kind of, the whole intro to the plot of Rogue One. But I think by the beginning of Rebels, let's just call it 5 BBY, which is 14 years after this movie here, I think they're done with the design of the Death Star and whatnot. They just need this thing to be able to blow things up. Otherwise, it's just a big station.
Yeah, I mean, we do see in like Andor 1 at the end of the season when they where like the outer shell's pretty much finished. They're building the pieces for the laser basically at that point.
Right. And there you go. That's 4 or 5 years of building the laser.
Yeah.
And also, um, you had mentioned it's like, oh, they're building this thing right under the Republic's nose and no one noticed. The Republic still didn't know about it, even in A New Hope.
Yeah.
They just find out about it. They knew there was something right before, and that's why they got the plans, right? And that's the whole thing with the beginning of the movie. So basically, I guess in New Hope they knew, but in Rogue One's like when they found out.
Yeah. I also feel like now I think I just make some sense here where maybe they're moving slowly to sort of keep it from leaking out because at that point you're in control. It doesn't really matter like how long it takes you to build it. But like you also figure maybe Galen Erso is sort of like moving slower than he would just to sort of keep this thing from being finished.
Totally possible, right? I think both theories are correct. I think that they were going slowly to make sure, building the parts and, getting all that material out into space to build this thing was not raising any alarms to anyone. And then also too, Galen Erso's kind of taken against his will to do this and he doesn't want to do it. So he's probably trying to prolong this process as much as he can to maybe figure out a plan or to try to prevent it from happening entirely.
Yeah. Well, this thing I noticed on this rewatch here is like again like how George tries to solve the Padme problem, where like we know that she's not around the original trilogy, and George sort of figures out like okay, like she has to die in order to sort of make Anakin's fall worth it from a narrative perspective. But the thing that bothered me, Nick, watching this movie is like that the character we see the first two movies in terms of like being like this aggressive, fearless leader, like I don't know if they want to just blame it on the fact that like she's with children, sort of like her hormonal balance is off here, but like this is not the same like mental character that we've had the first two movies in terms of how Padme's treated in the story.
It's not, and I think the reason why is it almost seems like the writing was on the wall for you. Let's assume you never saw episode 3 and you saw all other Star Wars material. The writing is on the wall for you that Anakin kills Padme,
Yeah.
and they don't want to do that. And I think they had to go out of their way to not do that because it was pretty like apparent that was going to happen. And I guess indirectly he did kill her, you could say. But I think that that's why she wasn't as powerful as a character as she was in the other movies because she needed to die in another way, which made her less powerful.
Yeah. Yeah, P. I think the thing that's also interesting here is like you said, like Padme's very calm and collected the first movie. Like here, like she's very emotional, like she's very like clingy to Anakin, which is not something that like you see out of the character. And like the way they just wrote it out, like she's lost the will to live because Anakin falls to the dark side. It just feels very out of character of what we see in the first two movies.
It's character progression, right? I mean, I think that out of character versus character growth is different, right? I mean, she goes from, meeting this boy, on Tatooine to falling in love with someone and being the mother of his children. And I think that that character development shows a difference in how Padme interacts with him. And I think also she's experiencing the same things that Anakin is. There's a fear that she has because she, as you see in the movie, she feels like she's losing Anakin. She sees how he's acting. She sees how he's being, much different too. He's also playing a little out of character than when we first meet him as like when he's a child. So I think it's just good character development. And I think that this rise and fall of the character is what's needed. And I think it works pretty well.
And let's not forget about how she has such a seat, or some of the word I'm looking for, such a presence in the political world where she was a queen that I don't even know how she was 14 in the movie, but she must have been a queen. That wasn't her first day. She was probably a queen for at least a year or two prior to that. So she had been a queen since she was, let's just say, 12 years old for sake of argument. And she was a senator, and then she seized as a senator from Naboo, the planet she was the queen of, become the chancellor, and they were friends. And then remember how he just keeps staying in term and staying in term, and you could see her losing faith in the government, and that's something that probably changes her character as well, where she gets to a point where she feels voiceless and powerless, and you could even see it when she says that thunderous applause line, where she's just losing faith in everything, where it's just her character just more or less giving up.
Yeah, because for me, when I watched, I felt like all of her like characters in the first two movies, they just gave to Bale in this movie because they knew Pat's not going to be here. We want Bale to be the rebellion character, whereas like in the past, it was you could see Padme getting on her ship and saying, "I'm going to go pick the Jedi up and rescue the Jedi." Or
Now, think about it though. If that's Padme,
yeah,
what's going to happen to her? Because you know she's not in the other movies. You know she has to die. How is she going to die if she's fighting?
yeah,
She's
then
going to get killed, and they don't want to show that.
yeah,
They just don't want to show. Like we've had character deaths in Star Wars, and a lot of them have been a little, I don't want to say, they've always been like moments. What I'm trying to say is, when was the last time, I can think of only really one, where a main character got murdered?
Yeah, yeah, probably. There's only the one from Force Awakens.
That's the only one I can think of, is where Han Solo just got murdered. You don't really see it happen. And I feel like seeing that would have, I mean, the movie was already rated PG-13 because he was the younglings and whatnot. I mean, they didn't even show anything, but it's implied. But I just don't think they could have shown that. They didn't want to show that.
Yeah, so you think they just like sort of gave bail like to stop Padme and Riley doing for that reason?
Yeah, and funny, he ended up surviving. But I just, if you know Padme is gonna die and you turn her into a fighter and a warrior, then she's gonna have to get slaughtered, murdered. And it doesn't make sense because if she gets slaughtered, murdered, Anakin's gonna know what happened. He's gonna say, "Well, no, you guys killed him. You guys killed her. I hate you now."
Yeah,
So she had to die in a way that was like hopeless for him. No way that he can possibly do anything about it.
yeah,
It was quote unquote his fault.
yeah,
So he had to live with his own failure, which
yeah,
only made him more angry.
yeah. Pete, do you think that decision made sort of plays into why like the infamous deleted scenes from this movie that are canon showing Padme meeting with Mon and Bale and forming the rebellion early? You think those like the idea that we have to like rebel as a government? You think that's maybe part of why those scenes got cut?
Yeah, I mean, I agree with Nick wholeheartedly. I think he hit the nail on the head. I think that if you don't do it this way, a lot of the storyline also becomes not moot, but it's like you need that. Like Nick said, you need that for Darth Vader's character to be more angry at himself at the situation and blame someone else other than himself too at the same time. So I think I think that that rebellion side could have worked. It may have felt like it was wasted if you again kept those in and then have her pass away the way she did. You probably would want her, if you did need to get rid of that character, die in battle, like Nick was saying. So that's probably why they just felt like it doesn't fit into the mold of what Padme's character was showing in this movie.
Yeah. I also think like anything else, like let's go over from Padme for a minute. Like any other storylines you want to touch on here?
We spoke about Anakin. We spoke about Padme. Um, I guess all that's left is Palpatine, which we touched on a little bit. But
We did a whole Obi-Wan section, I think couple of years ago for Kenobi, so I don't think we did revisit that too much because his
well, I mean, we could touch on it quickly just because it's the 2-year-old episode.
yeah. Because I mean, like
But
basically these movies, like he kills Grievous, and like I will say the thing with the Palpatine situation that's great here is like the touch of like, oh, like I didn't catch the first time is the whole idea of okay, like I'm giving the information of where Grievous is. I'm gonna tell the council to send you, knowing they won't send you, and then they'll probably send Obi-Wan over there. So I think like he's sort of playing getting us out, saying, okay, I need to break off Obi-Wan from Anakin here. This is a good way to do it because if I say try and put my weight on the situation with the council, they're gonna do the opposite of what they think I want, which is what I actually want. He's doing the double reverse on them.
yeah, and I think more importantly than even Obi-Wan, and if you want to continue the Obi-Wan conversation, definitely we can. But we got to talk about the Jedi Council.
Yeah.
I guess Obi-Wan's included, so we can kind of just you don't even have to pivot very far just because he's part of the council. But like, it's almost as if Mace Windu was just begging Anakin to turn to the dark side.
Yeah, the complete lack of trust in him at all corners.
Yeah, and I mean, it looks like we'll never know, but it looks like he finally had earned his trust when he walked into that office and he gave him that hand signal, like staying down, like you were right. He gave him a look as if I trust you now, but
Too late.
a little too late. If Anakin showed up 3 minutes later, although he probably would have said, "Would you kill him?" and then he probably would have flipped that anyway. But you see my point.
Yeah. I think also the other interesting thing here with this situation, Pete, with the Mace not trusting Anakin, like if he brings Anakin with him on the Force that shows up, like he with the four Master Jedi here, and he sees like Palpatine brutally murdering three Jedi, maybe you sway Anakin a little more that way.
I agree. I mean, I've been saying it for years that the Jedi Council is directly responsible for him becoming Darth Vader. If he has more confidence or if he has more inclusivity in the Jedi Council, he's less likely to go against the Jedi Council. I mean, it's very simple. And it wasn't just Mace Windu, it was Yoda, it was a bunch of other people. So I know Mace Windu is the most vocal about it. You need that character, right? You need the one that's going to lead the pack there and convince the others that we shouldn't trust X, Y, or Z. Just happens to be Mace in this situation. But yeah, I mean, they're directly responsible for everything that happens, and I feel like the reason why the Empire comes to power is because of the failure of the Jedi Council.
Yeah, yeah.
I agree with that, but I do not agree that Anakin should have went with them. Should have went with them. I think he could have did a better job at finding some other Jedi. I think he could have maybe got Yoda to come. I know Yoda might have been a little busy at the time, but you see my point.
That's my argument for years. I always said just grab everybody in the temple with and go with
Yeah,
you.
I don't think Anakin should have been there, though. I think that was the right decision to tell him that you shouldn't come because his emotions are going to get the better of him in that moment. And you can't risk the fact that he could easily just say in the middle of his fight, actually, never mind, and just stab two of your Jedi before you blink.
Yeah,
I don't think it was the right idea. Excuse me, I think it was the right idea to bring Anakin, to not bring Anakin along. So I think that was right. But I agree with you, Pete, that the council is, I would say, I want to say 100. I would say mostly to blame because I know Palpatine has his foot in their, in their water, if you will, and he's kind of pursuing a lot of the things as well. But they are primarily responsible for the turn.
yeah. I also give an honorable mention to Yoda here in this part, especially because the first scenes we see with Anakin after the battle in the beginning of the movie, which is still holds up great, the CGI and whatnot, all the fun elements of it, is like when he goes to Yoda and says, like, I'm like, what do you do if you are afraid of laws? And he's like, just don't feel anything. Like, gee, great. That's gonna work great for the guy who came in the council as a jazz house, like 10-year-old. Had plenty of time, like not suppressing emotions, just suppress your emotions, pretend they don't exist. That was really bang on advice from Yoda there.
I guess it's true in real life too.
He just went by the book. That was the
Yeah, but it's true in real life too. Like none of us knows what happens when we pass away, and we something that if you sit around and think about, you could freak yourself out and really get scared about. But like, there's no like you can't go to like, oh, I'll go to another therapist. They'll tell me what happens. Like no one knows.
yeah.
So it's something that if you fall down the rabbit hole of continuing to think about, then yeah, you're gonna get yourself into some deep, anxious, depressive things, but you could do your best to just not think about it. And I guess that's kind of what Yoda's trying to tell him. It sounds horrible. It sounds like terrible advice, but there's really not really any other advice. Like, what's he supposed to say? Like, well, if you sleep on your left side, she won't die. Like, there's no response to it.
Yeah, because Anakin's in this spot where like he's trying to keep the secret also. And like I think Yoda kind of knows but doesn't know what he's trying to nudge him, saying, just cut off your attachments here. It's like go back down the Jedi path and things will be okay. And then
He said as clear as day, and he's 100% right. And it sounds terrible, but there's no other way to say it. Death is a natural part of life.
it's like,
Nothing you can do about it.
yeah, Pete, if you watch The White Lotus season 3,
Yeah.
yeah.
Never watched the show.
Yeah, so like if we gave Anakin the talk the monk gives Piper in season 3, maybe that soothes his mind a little bit.
Well, there's one thing that I thought of that I just thought of
Yeah.
that, and it's way too late, but it's possible how Anakin could have combated this differently.
Okay.
Now, it's kind of possible, but you can't blame Anakin for this because he didn't even know this yet. Technically speaking, if Padme learned the ways of the Force and Yoda knew about the path to immortality through Qui-Gon, Padme could have learned to be a Jedi, died, and then become a Force ghost.
Yeah, it's a little too late.
It's a little late. She had like a month to do like 15, 20, maybe 30 years of training, but not, I'm just saying it's better than a 0% chance.
I think the problem here is that like I think that obviously I think Obi like do you feel like Pete the movie makes it clear that Obi-Wan knows that Padme and Anakin are involved before he has the meet with Padme at the end?
I think so. Yeah, I think it's not like put on a silver platter for you, but I feel like they know. Like it's pretty like I think like everyone knows. Like I don't think it's like a huge secret, even though they think it is.
Yeah. It's like, is it too hard? Like, is it too easy for them to just say, you know what, like this is not the path for you. Like walk away and like go live your life with your wife and your children.
I'm not so sure about that. I think as the years have gone on, it's become more obvious, like with the Clone Wars and other background information. But I think when you watch episode three, I don't think it's clear because when she is pregnant and she's in their apartment, Obi-Wan says like, Anakin's the father, isn't he? Like that was like as if that was the first time that was spoken.
Yeah.
So maybe Obi-Wan knew, sure, but I don't think it was known by Anakin and Padme that Obi-Wan knew.
Yeah. Anything before anybody else want to add on this thing before I add two more random observations before we start wrap up what we're doing here?
No.
All right. Two other random notes I think are interesting here. This stuff.
I do have one more thing. Sorry.
Yeah, sure.
I think that there was my biggest negative on the movie by far, and this includes Attack of the Clones and also Revenge of the Sith. You have these separatists, the Confederacy of Independent Systems, and they try to make them seem like big deals,
Yeah.
and they do a better job at fleshing them all out in the Clone Wars. But you get two scenes of these guys total. Now you get the Viceroy and whatnot from the Phantom Menace, so they're kind of unincluded. But in Attack of the Clones, they're sitting around and they just talk about whether or not they'll sign the treaty. And in Revenge of the Sith, you just see them in the corner of your eye, just dying to Anakin. They're not fleshed out at all as characters, and it kind of makes their death extremely uneventful because they're not fleshed out whatsoever.
Yeah.
We don't even know who they are, like the guy from the banking clan, like, who has that muffler or whatever on his voice. Like
Yeah.
he's in Revenge of the Sith, just standing up from a desk when Anakin walks in. They didn't even show him die. You're just led to believe he does. The Gungan who had not the Gungan, sorry, the Geonosian who had the Death Star plans was also there on Mustafar, who gets slaughtered in one thing. You don't see anything, hear anything. Even Viceroy, the guy who kind of was the main villain in episode one. If it wasn't him, it was Maul, close enough to the main villain in episode one. Had a pretty large role in episode two, too. He has like one line in three, and he just goes, boom, you're dead.
I think like they just it's better with the screen time they had instead of trying to like make us sympathize with the separatists in some form. They said, you know what, there's gonna be waves of droids. You have to stop the droids. That's the whole like, vision of the Clone Wars.
It seemed like it was kind of thrown in at the last minute. Like, oh yeah, these guys are supposed to be dead.
Yeah,
Just kill them all in one scene, and then they're gone.
yeah, yeah. Two things I think I just also thought of randomly in this movie here in terms of because number one, like it's very funny watching like Anakin like sprinting to the opera performance when everybody else is just kind of chilling there and like he's in this big hurry and they can sound like he's in a big like hurry to go watch this weird like Swan Lake Star Wars performance with Palpatine, which I thought was very funny to see that in the
He was late
yeah yeah, but even like still you see the people walking in just casually and he's like
because those are the bureaucrats. They don't care if they're late. Anakin's a common man.
he's a common folk and
You see George Lucas in that scene.
he's a senator in that scene.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Maybe that's a different scene then.
He's there. I think he's in the background.
But he's not a senator. I think he's just a rich guy.
So he's a rich dude.
I think he's just an audience member, like walking to his seat, but he doesn't care that he's late because he's a lot of money and whatnot. And Anakin's just trying not to be. If you think about it, Anakin's late to a meeting with his boss.
Yeah.
If you think about it, right?
Yeah. And number two, there's something else I just thought of here. Like at the beginning of the movie, like when like after the battle and they land the ship and Palpatine's back and like Anakin gets his glorious day at the politicians, Obi-Wan puts it here, and Padme's hiding in the corner, basically like this Anakin runs, finds her, like, oh, like I'm pregnant. Like something here, like I don't think that either of them thought out very well. Like, what were they gonna do? Like when like she started like becoming more visibly pregnant as the scene went on. Like I assume that there's like paparazzi and media on this planet. Like they're gonna wonder, like, we never see her like out on dates with anyone. Like who the hell like got the Senator Amidala pregnant? Who's the father of this child, of these children?
They'd have to make something up. She'd have to make up somebody. If anything, let's say it all worked out in a good way, meaning the Emperor was gone and the Republic started just living the way the Republic had been with no more separatists.
Yeah.
I would imagine they would hire somebody to be a fake father for the children. Let's just say Bail Organa. Actually, he's kind of a different generation. No, your case work. Whatever, it works.
He also married.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah.
I think Mundi, because he looks like a young bachelor. But they'd have to hire someone. I'm just gonna say Bail Organa for sake of argument. I know it doesn't work because I can't think of anyone else right now. But he would just pretend to be the father,
Yeah.
and really, in reality, Anakin was. And if anything, that it would kind of stink. It would ruin the relationship and whatnot because the rules would still remain in that world that we're thinking of this scenario in. But
I just don't
that'd be the only way. That'd be the only way.
I just don't think it's realistic, like to maintain that illusion for that long. P. I think like Padme was right hitting the nail on the head. Like when they figure it out that like you're the father, like and like they know that like I'm not with anybody else. Like you're gonna have to leave. Like you can't continue this with the current rule system.
That
Yeah,
also, I mean, that also could have happened.
yeah, and then the whole story of Star Wars would have been messed up.
There would be no Star Wars. There would be
It
no
would be, it'd be Anakin and Padme living their suburban life, with two kids. So I
I think they'd move to Naboo.
yeah, they would yeah, he would be the like suburban dad.
yeah,
Yeah.
cutting the grass outside, saying hi to the neighbor.
You
Yeah.
had two choices. It's either live the suburban life on, let's just say, Naboo, or live a secret life on Coruscant, where Anakin's a Jedi, Padme's a senator, and they have a secret child together, and they just do little shady visits. And
Yeah,
that's about it. Yeah, those are their two choices.
yeah, and it seemed like I mean she also said like I like they're gonna want me to leave at some point like if this comes out. So like it's not even like she was like gonna be like able to keep being a senator if this was going on.
Well, having a child, or you mean being with Anakin?
I think they like once that got exposed,
Once what got exposed? I mean,
like, Anakin that she was like with Anakin and
oh
Anakin,
yeah. Now the point is that they would have to still keep it under cahoots.
yeah,
They would have to do their best to keep it quiet for as long as possible, and that really was getting pretty hard already, but they'd have to keep trying.
big pressure cooker Palpatine took advantage of.
Yeah,
And do you think Palpatine's aware of this before Anakin told him
that she's pregnant.
that he's involved with Padme and he's the father of her soon to be born child?
I think so.
Yeah, doesn't he bring it up? Doesn't he say like, "Aren't you afraid of losing Padme?" And like, but Anakin hasn't blatantly told anyone.
And
Isn't that a whole conversation they have?
Yeah, I'm pretty
Helping
sure
save
the
her? Like,
entire opera show,
yeah,
he never mentions the name Padme, and
no,
Palpatine does.
yeah,
yeah. So he definitely knew.
yeah. All right. Anything else you guys want to add before we wrap up here?
Not for me.
No,
Yeah, I think it's a nice little bonus episode for you guys here. We're in the middle of Andor season. We'll be back later this week with Arc 3 of Andor here. TBD, it's be a Thursday drop or a Friday drop, but we are halfway home, so we're getting a 2 BBY this week, Nick.
yeah. Season's been great so far. Can't wait for the second half.
Yeah, a lot of Gorman Massacre so far.
Yeah, yeah. I don't. We'll see.
All right. I want to thank you guys once again for coming on here. Pete, people want to follow you on social media. How can they do that?
At Consi29 on Twitter, CONSY29 on Twitter, Apatow308 has this background on Reddit. Make sure you check him out.
Yeah, Nick, one more time. People want to follow us on social media. How can they do that?
At Sky Guys Podcast pretty much anywhere, and at Sky Guys Pod at gmail.com if you want to email the pod.
Yeah, you can also follow me on social media at mphillips331. It's MPHILIPS331. This is going on the Just End the Suffering podcast. We're wrapping up the NFL draft. So, NFL draft recap this week here as not a lot of activity in the spring sports front because the Rangers are out of the playoffs. The Devils are probably out by the time you're listening to this, and the Knicks, who knows?
Um, I don't like basketball for the regular season, but I love the playoffs.
Yeah, you're locked in right now.
Yeah, I think it's really entertaining stuff. First round, maybe not so much, but once you get past the first round, it's very exciting stuff. It's good. But the big joke is that no one plays defense in the NBA, but in the playoffs, they kind of do. They kind of have to, right?
Yep. They
So,
got
good time.
Yep, we'll be back next. We'll be back later this week to continue our Andor coverage. But until then, may the force be with you.